So Wes was selling 10,000 pounds of meat to grocery stores, making a decent W-2 salary when he had kids and realized he wanted to stop working 60 hours per week. His wife was the one that was extra supportive that he find another opportunity that would let him earn just as much with having more freedom for his schedule. You guys are going to love this episode where, just like I said, if you want to quit your W-2 job, you'll learn from people who have replaced their W-2 income through the business model of wholesaling real estate. It's where you can find big checks, you find rundown houses, and you make big checks for finding them and passing them off. Wes made $18,000 on his very first deal, and then he quit. He's done 15 deals in the last year, and he actually just did a deal that he helped sell through Ryan, my normal co-host. This is the podcast for 10xing your income and replacing your W-2. My name is David Lecko. I created a process that's helped people close 10,000 deals in all 50 states that turned into the software platform DealMachine. And this is an episode if you want to quit your W-2 job. So Wes, how much did you make on your very first real estate wholesaling deal?
On my first wholesale deal, I made $18,750.
1,800?
18,700.
18. Wow. That's actually quite a bit. Where was it?
I was in Independence, Missouri. No, sorry, this one was in the Northland of Kansas City.
Okay, got it. So do you live in Kansas City yourself?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Gotcha. And when was that first deal?
That would have been May of 22.
Okay, so about a year ago.
Yeah, just a little over a year ago.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on your first deal. What motivated you to go looking for a deal in the first place?
Well, at the time I was still working my W-2 job. I got into real estate investing, buy and hold back in 2018. Went down the same path many people do, bigger pockets, chasing passive income. So I had a decent W-2, decent income, using excess money from that job to purchase buy and hold real estate. But the ultimate goal was to leave the W-2. And when you're getting $100, $150 a month cash flow and you project that out, like by the time I get this thing set to cover my living expenses, I can retire anyway. So like there's got to be a way to make chunks of money to replace this income a little bit quicker. So started looking at a little bit more active approach to the investing, and wholesale comes up. I mean, you do any kind of internet search, it comes up in ways to make money in real estate. So that was going to be the way to make bigger chunks of money and then still allow me to see the deals to add to my portfolio as I went.
Amazing. So you had bought a couple rental properties. You realized they're cash flowing a couple hundred a month. So if you're having to put 25% down, which is a typical mortgage amount for a rental, you're going to run out of money before you can retire. So you need to make big chunks. And then wholesaling is a great way to make those big chunks. But I always think it's kind of like you get to get paid for just practicing finding great deals, right? You don't have to take them all down. You can pass them off, make the money. And then when you see a really great one, you know it. So you can just take it down without a doubt. So how many wholesale deals have you been able to do so far?
I'm at 15 total since last year.
Dude, that's awesome. That's like one a month.
Yeah, it's not bad. There's, as you guys know, it's ups and downs. It comes in waves. I had a streak this summer where I signed 6 deals in 5 days, and then you'll go 3 months without getting a deal. But that's just the nature of the business.
Got it.
When you did your first deal, what was your strategy in terms of marketing? How did you go about finding your deals?
So when I very first started, when I was at my W-2, we were doing texting only. I linked up with a guy here in Kansas City that was doing texting only. And he set me up with his, the folks who were running the texting campaigns. And then we had a VA to follow up. As I got a little bit further down the path, I saw that wasn't the model that I wanted for my business. Texting was kind of coming under a little bit of pressure, as we've seen here recently, with getting shut down. And then you just have to follow up. Those leads aren't near as warm as, say, a direct mail lead is. So I ran the texting for a little while. I did get some leads from it, but ultimately I switched over to primarily direct mail just because you may not get as many leads but they're a lot warmer, and there's a lot less nurturing that has to happen. And I had a W-2 job at the time, and I was a one-man show. So having to call, 100 people a week in the evenings, I've got 2 young kids, it just wasn't feasible. So
how did you even know who to text?
Yeah.
So the guy that I linked up with here in Kansas City kind of gave me a little bit of a blueprint, but texting is a very high volume game, so you can't rely strictly on, say, niche lists. You're pulling just high equity, just kind of the mass lists. And the downside of that is anybody else that's texting is likely hitting those same people. They're getting bombarded with a lot of messages. So you're one of many, and that type of marketing gets lost. Whereas a direct mail piece, a lot of folks will stick that on the refrigerator, stick it in a drawer, and you'll get calls from it 6 months later.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. So
how do you determine what you like? What do you work off a list to send a mail? Like, how do you get those leads for who you're
same thing? So I will pull a bulk list that may be non-owner occupied, high equity, or no loan type stuff. But also I'm pulling some data from the county websites. I'm getting pre-foreclosure data that I'm pulling myself to the recorder's office, divorce listings, things like that they're a little bit more difficult to get. So you have a little bit less competition there.
if you guys want any of this data, there's 300 data points you can filter in the app DealMachine. You can get a 7-day free trial at DealMachine.com/pod. And you get 35 free postcards for using that URL.
Yeah. Let's dive a little bit deeper into that first deal. Tell us, once you got a hold of them, and then you set an appointment, what was that conversation like? What was going through the house like? What was making the offer like? Tell us all the details.
So that would have been my first wholesale deal, would have been really like my third appointment that I'd ever been on. So I had a couple of reps. The first contract that I ever signed, I bailed out on like a day later because I was into it way too high. I just got too excited and signed a contract. So this one, I was a little bit more calculated going in. You build rapport. I came from a sales background, so building rapport was something that I was used to doing in my day job. So you just talk to the folks, walk around, really listen for what they're trying to achieve and what they need.
In this case, what was that?
He wanted to sell his house, pay off some debts, and move to Central Missouri because his new job was completely remote. He no longer needed to be in the Kansas City area, and he wanted to be nice and easy. Like, this wasn't a distressed seller or somebody that had a foreclosure coming. He wanted to hit the easy button, and I was going to allow him to do that.
How did you feel when you heard those things?
I had heard you will know what a motivated seller sounds like when you have one in front of you. Like, I'd had lots of conversations from when we were doing the texting on the phone of people who weren't motivated at all. That conversation sounds completely different than when you have a real, true motivated seller in front of you. Like, it makes you not chase the deal as much. Like, that, we used to say the fish is swimming to the boat. Like, you've got this guy, take your time, do it right. And so ultimately I came back, ran my numbers, and put out an offer that I thought was way too low, and he took it. So
how did you come up with the offer?
So, I used Zillow, Redfin, and just kind of got what the ARV, after repair value, would be on the house. Backed out what I thought the rehab costs were going to be. I had absolutely no idea. I used some, formulas that I'd found off the internet for, mid-level rehab on X amount of square foot.
What was it?
Mm-hmm.
I think it was like $30 a square foot for 1,500 square feet or something like that. So I took my after repair value, subtracted the repair costs, and then did the 70% to back into where I thought we would need to be, and then deducted what I wanted to get on my assignment, and that's what I offered.
What'd you get on your assignment? $18,000?
Yeah, $18,750.
What was the total value of the contract?
The total value, I think I offered the guy $225 or $220. When I first started, I give random numbers. It was like $220.
So you're
$475 or something.
Yeah. So just so somebody can picture, that was about 10%, right? It was a little less than 10%, but you were getting a 10% assignment fee.
Correct.
Cool.
All right. So you got the property under contract. Now, what did you do to find a buyer?
Started scraping all the investor Facebook pages here in Kansas City. I kind of freaked out a little bit, and there's a guy in town that is like known for being just a quick cash buyer, and he'll buy stuff sight unseen. And so I put it out to him. He has a ton of experience. He worked me down a little bit on the price, but ultimately he signed. Before we even closed, he had reassigned it. And he made another 20 grand on it. So
We need to know who that guy is.
yeah, well, I know who it's House Magic here in Kansas City. So
Okay.
yeah, he takes most everything down. I think he ended up double closing on the deal, but he had it moved, which is funny because the gal that he sold it to tried to sell it back to me because she knew I was looking for land or houses in the Northland, and she's like, "Oh, I got a deal for you," and like, so it turned into a big couple days trying to figure out what was going on, and ultimately it was her sister-in-law that bought the house and they live in it. So
Now, did you double close? You did not.
no, I assigned it to him.
Yeah.
She closed it and then sold it to this other gal.
Okay.
She thought maybe she could sell it back to me and make a little bit on it herself, but
So this was your very
Very
first deal.
that around too many times. It starts running out of
yeah.
meat.
One thing I liked, though, that this person was legitimate. He didn't market it until he had it under contract with you. And it sounds like he closed on it from you and then marketed it himself.
Yeah.
So that was legitimate. I think people get into sticky situations sometimes where they market properties they don't have under contract, which is not something you should do. So you were making pretty good W-2 money, you said, right?
Yeah.
And you wanted to retire early. And do you still work your W-2 now?
No, I left in, would have been April of 22. So I guess this deal would have been right after I left. It started while I was still at the job.
And how many deals did you do before you decided to quit that job?
One.
What was that job?
So I sold beef. I was a sales and marketing guy for a beef company here in Kansas City.
Who are you selling it to? Restaurants?
Restaurants, distributors, grocery stores. So like our minimum sale was 10,000 pounds. So it wasn't like a box here or a couple hamburgers there. It was large quantities. So,
You went from wholesaling beef to wholesaling houses. So
yeah, that's exactly right.
did you like it?
Yeah, I didn't mind it. I enjoyed a lot of it, but it was a lot of hours. The company had kind of the old school meatpacking mentality. So I worked in an office as a corporate job, but I'd get there before 6 a.m. and I'd work till almost 5 p.m. And then I had a lot of travel throughout the country. It was great before I had kids, but once I had two young kids, being gone 2-3 nights a week and leaving my wife to have to handle and do everything herself was pretty tough on us.
So now what's your
How does she feel about this transition of job change?
She was actually my biggest cheerleader and probably pushed me to do it. Had it just been me making the decision, I might still be sitting in my corporate job, to be honest with you. And, a lot of people say that if you leave your job and you come home, it's worse. Like you and your spouse aren't used to having that much time together, but it's been fantastic.
Right.
I get to make breakfast for my kids every morning, take them to the bus stop, pick them up from school. Like none of that would have been possible in my job.
Yeah. Yeah. We've got similar stories. It's been a little bit long, but that is one of the best things. Like every day I have the opportunity, because of wholesaling and real estate, the opportunity to have coffee every morning with my wife, and not like usually in a sales job, you're out the door at 6:30 to be at the office on time or early. And so I wouldn't even see my kids. Like a lot of times I'd get home around 6:30, enough to like get them bathed and in bed, and then I'd be up and gone before they're even out of bed. And now it's like I'm home so much. I'll spend some time in the office, but usually home by 4 o'clock. I don't usually start working till 9 o'clock. Get to take them to school, get to have breakfast with them every day. It's so, you have so much freedom and availability off of something that's like really not that much of a change for you. It's like you went from selling one product to another product. And so the concept, yeah,
the old job to this, it's just a different, not a widget, but it's just a different item that you're selling or.
But you also have more control in how much you get paid, what you do with your time, what you do with your family. Like you don't have to put time off requests to go on vacations. Right. It's like, I'm just going to go whenever you want.
Wes, tell me a few things that were road bumps along the way. Like, when did you start looking for this first deal, and how long did it take to find the first deal that you got?
So the first wholesale deal, we started marketing in February, and this came through in May. So it was several months. And then again, once we made that next transition to direct mail, we started direct mail in November of last year, and I didn't get my first direct mail deal until April of this year. So, I mean, it takes a while, and I would say that's probably the most difficult part for a lot of people is you can go out and you can find deals very quickly, but sometimes that's a downside because it took you 3 weeks to find your first deal. It may take you 4 months to find the next one, and just being able to stay in there and just trust the process and keep going, because it'll come. After we got that first deal in April of this year, they started following. It's just, you have to stay consistent. And if you look at how much money I was spending on mail, a lot of people would have just said, I'm done with it.
How much were you spending?
It was $7,000-8,000 a month was my overhead.
No income. That's huge.
Dang. But you had Mike DeHaan on the podcast a little while ago. I joined his group, and really just seeing them do the process, stick with it. And there are so many stories in that group of, you're going to get in the hole a little bit with marketing if you follow this marketing path, but it'll pay off if you stay consistent.
Gotcha.
I think that was necessary because I was kind of the shiny object guy. It's like, oh, this has to be working better than this. And if you cut bait, that money is spent and that marketing channel's gone, and you just got to stick with it, and it'll start to pay off.
What type of mail pieces were you using? Were you using postcards?
Yeah,
ball
postcards. So we're using just a standard. It's a printed, kind of looks like a handwritten letter in a white envelope. We've tried all sorts of different things. We switch it up a little bit every so often. But I've found that the open rate that I get and the response rate that I get from that white envelope and just a standard simple letter is the best.
Amazing. And then you guys know each other because I know you had a deal even after doing 15 or so deals. The most recent deal you did, that you wanted to work with somebody to help sell it for maybe more than you could on your own, right?
Yeah.
And you and Ryan did a deal. That's how we know you.
Yeah. That's right.
So tell me about that one.
So, what are you doing in my market?
Yeah, I moved up into Ryan's market. So in Kansas City, what I found is my cost per deal or cost per lead was super high, a lot higher than a lot of other guys in my investor group. So I thought, maybe we're a little oversaturated. I'm going to try another market and see what happens there. So started mailing in St. Joseph, and I got a ton of leads, which part of it was a learning curve. Some of them weren't great leads, but I got a couple decent leads. I got a contract, but I didn't have any buyers up there. And so I started calling, and you start to learn, the unwritten rules of the market and who's buying where. And all the local buyers said that they weren't going to buy on the south side. And so people are buying down there. I started working through so I reached out to them to see if they might buy it, but not interested in buying it, but they thought they had a buyer. And so I was definitely on board with JV and to find a buyer on this deal. Again, leads cost money, marketing costs money. I'd rather take, half of a decent deal than nothing, right? So it's all about converting your leads into revenue. And so we worked with Ryan, and his team was able to get it across the finish line.
And you just what's around for who's active in this market, or you asked around?
I did some research. I pulled some lists, cash buyer lists. I was calling them, and everybody was just saying that, they didn't buy in that side of town, or for whatever reasons, a million different excuses. People buy down there because people own all those houses. So I decided instead of calling all these buyers one by one, I'm going to call a guy who has access to, hundreds of buyers and ask him, because he'll be able to answer that question quicker than me making those next 100 phone calls.
So you had it under contract. You got a hold of Ryan. Love that. Mm-hmm. Did you guys end up doing a JV agreement?
Yeah. Yep. We did a JV.
Talk to me about that. What was on that?
I'm going to listen. I just like to hear all this
from his perspective.
From your perspective, yeah.
So reached out. JV agreement was they find a buyer, and it was a 50-50 deal, which is perfectly fine with me. So what we did was we moved it up to their title company from the one that I had escrow with. The JV agreement just outlined they got 50%, I got 50% of the net, and some other terms like I'm not going to go try to take their buyers and stuff, which is perfect. I mean, that's completely understandable. So it was that, and then I communicated with Will on his team and Sadie on his team. Anything that was coming from title that I needed to do, I kept communication with the seller. They had communication with the buyer, and we worked through all the questions and issues that came up to get it done.
And it was not an easy deal. No. And I'm not as involved in the day-to-day, but I do get to hear the breadcrumbs of each deal. And I know that this was not an easy. There's a lot of hurdles on this deal, even to get it across the finish line. We had it was in a flood zone, I think, right?
Yeah, it's in a flood zone.
Yeah,
not like the worst, but again, it's still in a flood zone, so it required flood insurance. So what we ended up doing is out of ours, Ryan and I's spread, agreed to pay for 2 years worth of flood insurance for the buyer to make sure that the deal went through. So we took it out of our.
How much would that cost?
It was $2,400.
It was like $2,400.
It wasn't
okay. Yeah,
it wasn't crazy.
What was the total value of the property?
I had it under contract for $50. We assigned it for $60, and then take out the $2,400 for the flood insurance, and then we split what was left, and so we each made $3,800. And what I've found is that the thinnest deals are typically the hardest to be fun, but
they are.
That's just again the nature of the business, and you've got to convert these leads into revenue, otherwise,
yeah. Marketing money. Well, I'm glad you got it done. And the speed of getting it done is the name of the game. What is so interesting? The thin ones are hard, but it makes sense. What's the actual most that you've made on a single deal, Wes, as we wrap up?
The most I made, I wrote it down here, is 25.8, and that was earlier this summer, and that was kind of a creative structure. The assignment I made 17 and change, and because the flipper wanted to kind of share some risk, I took a 30% profit split on the flip on the back end. He was afraid that if he paid me all that I wanted on my assignment, he wasn't going to be able to get what he wanted on the flip. So I made another $8,400 on the backside of that split. So
that's amazing. Now,
and that was all an agreement like that you guys made before close?
Yeah. Yep. So we did the assignment, and then we had what we called a partnership agreement that outlined his role, my profit split. And then I had a recorded affidavit of equitable interest that we recorded with Platte County. And then at closing, all that came up in the title work. And so then I had to sign a quick claim deed and got my cut. They sent me a check from the title company when it closed.
Nice.
That's amazing. I'm curious. I know you said you quit after doing one deal, your W-2 job. Now you're making some pretty good assignment fees, $18,000, $25,000. But with the marketing expense, I'm curious, have you replaced your take-home pay yet from wholesaling?
No, like I said, the W-2 was pretty good paying. I anticipate this next year just having full years of mail out there. Again, with mail, it kind of snowballs. As long as you stay consistent, the leads will continue to come. So this next year, I anticipate we will. My wife got licensed. She's selling some of our flips for us. So, we're doing some wholesaling, we're doing some flipping, and just trying to maximize, our cut on each one of these leads and each one of the deals that come through. So,
got it. Well, thank you so much, Wes. It's been awesome to hear from you on this part of your journey where you were so bold to quit right away. And I love that you're just taking action finding people to help close your deals. Is there any place where people listening could continue to follow your journey? Maybe an Instagram account?
I've got an Instagram account. Honestly, I don't know what it is. I think it's Wes Steimel. So just at Wes Steimel on Instagram. I don't post there much. My wife tells me I need to do it more. So you might be able to follow our journey as she tags me in stuff that we're doing. She's a little bit better about keeping us up to date on socials.
Gotcha. So a couple things you mentioned. If you guys are listening, you heard Wes say he joined Mike DeHaan's group. He was episode 54 of the podcast. If you guys wanted to take a listen to that one, it's called From 30,000 in Debt to Making 50,000 in 6 Weeks with Mike DeHaan. You guys heard Wes use the JV agreement, which is so important to make sure you secure that deal. And we've got an example of Ryan's JV agreement at DealMachine.com/JV. And
it is the same agreement.
Yeah, the exact agreement. So, and then the final thing was, you guys had a property with a flood zone, and great problem solving by understanding the buyer was worried and you guys offering to pay for that flood insurance. And in the Deal Machine app, under land information, when you have a deal open, there's a flood zone option. And you could see if a property you're looking at is in a flood zone. If you guys want a 7-day free trial, go to DealMachine.com/pod to get 35 free pieces of direct mail, I believe. And Wes, we thank you so much for your
Wes, that'll help you with your marketing.
Great guest.
Yeah, I'll get it done.
Congratulations to your success, and I can't wait to check in on you next year and see when you fully replace that.
Time next year, yeah. I appreciate it, guys.
Of course.
Thanks for listening to the Deal Machine Real Estate Investing Podcast. Please leave us a review and follow along wherever you're listening to your podcast.